Speaker.
Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak to the Inquiries Bill in its third reading, and I acknowledge the genesis of this bill and the number of Labour hands that it's passed through, including the Honourable Annette King's and then the Honourable Rick Barker thereafter. I'm pleased to support this bill with government members, and I'd like to give a couple of bouquets. One is, as I have already, to my Labour colleagues who instituted this thing a very long time ago. But I must say the supplementary order paper that the government put forward was very good and was a suitable improvement on the bill. And I think it represented also, Mr. Speaker, something that you would have an interest in, and that is that it's this new form of supplementary order paper that I think is meant to be a readable SOP. And that is a real improvement, because often SOPs, supplementary order papers, come to the House and we're scrabbling to find out exactly which bit of the legislation they previously related to.
Makes it too easy for junior members.
And so this is very helpful in that what we really have in the supplementary order paper is a tracked version of the bill in its final form, and that's extremely helpful, because one of the things I wanted to draw attention to, and I seek your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, for a moment if this sounds like a second reading speech. I don't mean it to be, but one of the things that I was interested in my role as chair of the Regulations Review Committee was the extent of the regulation-making powers. And I think I want to refer particularly to what is called an establishment instrument, to establish an inquiry. And that's been an improvement, I think, with the deletion of the previous Part 7 and an inclusion of the new one, because the establishment instrument is defined in Section 4 as being, amongst other things, an order in council. And that's when the Regulations Review Committee begins to prick up its ears and say, OK, how far does this order in council power extend, and could it be used to thwart the original intention of the bill? But what has happened with this one is that it provides greater clarity. The establishment instrument, if it's going to be an order in council, must now do a number of things which I think are really important. In other words, a minister cannot simply say, we're going to have an inquiry into this and I'm appointing so-and-so. And terms of reference, I will set the terms of reference. What now has to happen is that whatever establishment instrument is used to establish an inquiry must specify the matter of public importance. It must name the person or the persons appointed to be members of the inquiry. If there's more than one person, they must name the chairperson and specify the date when the inquiry may begin considering evidence. It must also notify the terms of reference for an inquiry. So, or, if not in the establishment instrument, the appointing minister or appropriate minister must establish those terms of reference by notice in the Gazette as soon as reasonably possible. Now, some of this marks an improvement by nailing down the requirements for an inquiry if it is going to fit with this legislation. Mr. Speaker, that's an improvement. I think there have been some other additional pieces which have been included, and I refer to my colleague, the Honourable Trevor Mallard's supplementary order paper that has been agreed to by members opposite, because I think that also has refreshed and strengthened the purpose of the inquiries bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that the introduction of the supplementary order paper on the Minister's part has quite legitimately and appropriately come from the government's experience both with the Pike River coal mine tragedy and the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the building failure caused by the Canterbury earthquake. Both of those inquiries, Mr. Speaker, precipitated by tragic events. If we are able to make the terms by which an inquiry is established clearer, more immediate, more transparent by virtue of this bill, then this is something this House should pass with alacrity. Not only has the government's haste on this been precipitated by two tragedies, it's also obviously in response to the need to have an inquiry into the recent events surrounding Fonterra's products. And I, for one, am perfectly happy to advance the speed of this bill by, in order to be able to progress, in order for the government to be able to progress this inquiry's bill and the amendments in it. So while we have had some concerns around some of the requirements, we recognise that Trevor Mallard's amendment provides that before an inquiry makes an order to impose restrictions on access to the inquiry, it must take into account the benefits of observing the principle of open justice. And this is really important. If I draw for a moment again, Mr. Speaker, on the regulations review experience, we've had a recent complaint before the regulations review, which is now public and has been reported on to this House, with respect to the Teachers' Disciplinary Tribunal, the Teachers' Conduct Tribunal. And their presumption, for reasons which one can quite understand, but I think in the end were wrong, their presumption has been for the suppression of identity, generally to protect victims in those circumstances. And the Regs Review Committee has come down on the side of the need for the presumption of open justice to be there and suppression of details to be made by exception and not as the rule. Mr. Speaker, this bill is in a similar vein, and Trevor Mallard's amendment reinforces that same principle of open justice and also natural justice. So the default position, we believe, should be that an inquiry and the evidence that come to it and the findings of it should be open to the public. And that is the expectation that we have of inquiries that may occur in the wake of the passage of this legislation. So we believe that Trevor Mallard's amendment is an important change, and we're very pleased that the members opposite have considered it to be important as well. Mr. Speaker, this will strengthen the openness of information. It will strengthen the conduct of inquiries, and it will allow people in New Zealand to have confidence that when inquiries are called, they will have access to the content and the results. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Call Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My pleasure to be the final speaker on this bill as it